I heard the word crossroads a couple times last night. Joe Biden likes to use that term, and Katie Britt did as well. I think we can all agree that this country might be at one. Did Joe Biden deliver the message for the moment?
He did. And in that book, and in many programs that we've had at the Miller Center about the presidency at Crossroads, which developed for us upon the first, at least initial election of Donald Trump, was that we thought we were at a crossroads. But what does that metaphor mean? Does it mean two roads that come together in a rather rural area? Does it mean what we call in my hometown of Louisville, where all the interstates intersect, Spaghetti Junction? I thought that Joe Biden led the country last night up to the crossroads and then chose the route to take from this point onward. Not only did he say where we had come from on the road, going back to the Civil War in 1941 and the reference to FDR, where we are now, what he has done in the most recent past of the 3 years of his administration, and where he wants to take the country. So I think he came to the intersection, and you can view it as continuing forward, I think is what he did, that we're on a better road than we were when he was elected, certainly because of the pandemic and the violence, and now we're moving forward in a positive way.
Well, and he did very much say in the speech on a few occasions what he wanted to see in the future, that he wanted to look forward and not backward. Because, of course, Barbara, it wasn't just a typical State of the Union address in which an incumbent president is addressing the country. This is someone who is in an active general election campaign for a second term. Was this more State of the Union or campaign speech to you? Did he do both effectively?
It was both, and I think he did both effectively. So it is a constitutional moment, literally, because it is required that the president at least send a message about the State of the Union to Congress every year. And people who follow their presidential history know that in the early 20th century, starting with Woodrow Wilson, presidents began on a routine basis and a regular basis to go to speak to the Congress. So he did that. He followed the tradition. He followed the Constitution. But we can't, and he can't certainly be blind to the fact that because we have so early the two candidates lined up at the top of the ticket for the two major parties for November, that this in a way was a kickoff for the next phase of the campaign. And it was a chance for him to reset. I think because of all of the criticism he's been getting and all the concerns about his age, that was the first box that I think most of us had. Can he indicate that he's not sleepy Joe, but at the very least he's caffeinated Joe, and he's spirited, and he can get through an hours-long speech without fading and maintaining the strength that he needs to show as president.
Well, if that's what he was on last night, Barbara, I want some of that coffee. All I can ask, though, when it comes to the age issue, with your long view of the history of the State of the Union and politics in Washington, he's invoking FDR at the top of the speech here. Is that the way to young things up?
When he first said it, I thought, oh, dear, are people going to say, well, I guess you were there? And by the way, Stephen Colbert last night, I watched his live show at 11:30 Eastern time that, of course, they picked out parts and made fun of it. And that was the first one where he imitated Joe Biden and said, Joe says, 1941, FDR came to this chamber and said, hi, Joe. So, yeah, it was skating on some thin ice, but I thought he made it to the other side of the frozen pond, by saying, this was an important speech that was given here by my predecessor, another predecessor, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, just before the U.S. entered World War II. Hitler was on the march. And obviously what Biden was trying to do was say, this is what Putin is doing in Europe, in Eastern Europe. It could end up in Western Europe. I've strengthened NATO, but also to get to the point of our January 6, 2021 was very much like the beer hall putsch in 1923 of Hitler, starting on the road to Nazism and what eventually would be his coming to power as the chancellor of Nazi Germany.
Obviously, Barbara, there was most of this scripted reading being read from the teleprompter. There were several ad-lib moments, though, for the president. And then a few are where we saw perhaps hiccups. At one time, he was talking about how anyone could get with him on Air Force One, fly to a number of cities where they would find cheaper prescription drugs abroad, including Moscow. I don't believe he meant to say that. And then when baited by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene to say Laken Riley's name, he did do so. He held up the pin that he had been given by her. He addressed her parents, talking about how he knows what it's like to lose a child. But he also referred to her alleged murderer as an illegal, which a lot of Democrats have taken issue with. What do you make of the moments at which the president was speaking, not from the prompter, but just saying what he thought?
Well, probably planned Adlibs, if you will, that they knew, the White House knew, his advisors, his speechwriters knew the kinds of blowback he was going to get, because the Republicans, of course, are very open about their criticisms of him. And I'm sure they were prepared for someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene to stand up and, make a scene about people who are in this country illegally. The politically incorrect term is illegals to describe the person in a noun form. So maybe that was a bit of a faux pas as far as Democrats were concerned. But I think overall, most people are saying that Biden is actually quite good at speaking to those who are heckling him and in some ways baiting them, so you didn't really mean that, or, oh, I'm sure you can read. But it wasn't angry Joe that he displayed at the press conference several weeks ago. That is not a good look for him. It's not a good look for any president. President can be indignant, but to be angry, and especially to be elderly, of course, makes you look like the elderly neighbor who's yelling at the children out the window to get off his lawn. So I thought he hit the balance right. In terms of the occasional misspeaks, we all do it. And we know that his opponent misspeaks. And somebody might be well advised to add up the totals of misspeaks of the two major candidates and see if they come out about equal or if one is ahead of another.